Herschel Ebenfeld Mennonite Church. For generations, a beacon, a well of wisdom, humility, service, compassion, and countless forms of worship for God. A form of faith community difficult to describe in any amount of words. But if you've been here, you know. If you've been here and fully experienced here, you know. How many eyes have laid upon Psalm 119, verse 105? Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light for my path, in German or in English. A small piece of scripture so central to our church's mission. I pray this verse will remain with all of us, always.
My first recollection of the church is everything was in German. The women sat on the left, the men on the right. I was baptized in the church by Art Weens in 1972 and got married in the church in 1978. A person that stood out to me a lot was Pete Weens. He was always so friendly with my husband, who had a very strong French accent and didn't speak English very well. He always made him feel so at home.
Born in May of 1934, and I suppose my mom dragged me to church in May of 1934, and I've been going there ever since. It's a long time ago.
And I have been going to Herschel Ebenfeld Mennonite Church for 55 years. I was dedicated by Art Weens. Graham and I were married here in 2006. I was baptized in 2007, and we had Bryn dedicated in 2008. By all of those by Garth and Claire. This is a very special place for me.
Lois Siemens, interim pastor for 1 year. Herschel, H, humor. E, eating together enhanced my waistline. R, ready for anything. S, storytelling with scripture. C, Christ-centered worship. H, hitting the ditch, driving between Fisk and Herschel. E, entrance thankfully unlocked. L, leaning into lovely long friendships. Thankful for 100 years of God's faithfulness.
There was 1 year when all us Sunday school kids were put into one class regardless of age, and Henry Weeb was the teacher, and he would read from a children's Bible, stories from the Bible every week, and then we would draw the pictures of what happened in the story on a big long roll of paper. And when we made it through the entire Bible, we spread the paper, hung it up on the walls all around the church and the foyer. It was several layers long, and us Sunday school kids got to be the tour guides walking the rest of the church around the church building, looking at those drawings of the Bible stories on the walls. And to this day, I can still remember some of the more obscure Bible stories because we had that chance to go through the whole Bible in that way with all the Sunday school kids together.
To my recollection, that Rita Penner was my first Sunday school teacher, and I often admired her for her, patience. We were a bunch of naughty boys. There were 10 of us, I think. But she was always so patient and kind to us. That's another thought I have.
One day, our daily vacation Bible school teacher was describing heaven to us. I was absolutely mesmerized by her description. It just sounded so beautiful. Golden streets, pearls everywhere. It was wonderful. And I remember, I was so mesmerized by it. I remember praying and asking God that I could die and go to heaven. That has been a very real memory. I have thought about it several times in the many years past, and it's been special to me. Thank you.
This morning I'm remembering especially some of the faith exploration and baptismal classes Claire and I led while we were there. I think of the year that Joel Fair was part of our class. Joel had a childlike simplicity about his faith, and yet it was very profound. And we had some great conversations over the course of about 3 or 4 months. culminating in his baptism. I remember also the year that we did faith exploration with Becky and Brennan and Stacy. I think Becky commuted once a month from Edmonton, showing real commitment to the process. And we were delighted with the depth of conversation we shared with those three.
When I was in my late teens, and the church asked me to be one of 2 delegates to go to the conference in Edmonton in summer. Wow, that was the place where I got a broader view of what the church was all about, the broader church, and it inspired me, and I'm still involved with that church today. Thank you so much for that and trusting me with that.
As a boy in this church in the 1950s, my favorite memories are of the singing. First, the rousing congregational singing led by the Vorsänger, Mr. P.P. Sawatsky, and second, that of the excellent choir, conducted first by my Uncle Pete, standing on an old kitchen chair, and later by his son Albert. Beautiful voices were skillfully unified by the conductors to produce performances of familiar anthems that still echo in my mind. A lasting gift I received from this church and from my family is the love of music, both choral and instrumental. Albert had the vision and courage to invite my 12-year-old friends and me to join the church choir, singing alto at first, then tenor, and finally bass. Albert's beautiful violin playing also inspired my love of chamber music, and the first time I ever played my cello in public was in this church in 1960 in a trio with Albert and our cousin Margaret at the silver wedding of Uncle Henry and Aunt Helen. I still get hours of pleasure playing with family and friends, and I'm very grateful for that.
Leona Wiens accompanied the hymn singing every Sunday morning in church. It was obvious that she was pregnant. One Sunday she was playing the organ with her loose-fitting clothes. The next Sunday she was playing the organ again, much slimmer. We noticed that Peter in the back pew of the church was holding a baby and had a baby bottle in his jacket pocket. So Leona had the baby during the week and she didn't miss a beat.
This is Levon Wiens. Along with Lori Wiens, we led the Sunday School Children's Choir for a number of years. Besides singing at the Sunday services, they joined the 2000 Songfest performance at Saskatoon Centennial Auditorium. And in 2003, along with the community children, were asked to sing at Wade Sawatsky's funeral.
One special memory I have is from an Advent Sunday service. Linda and I played a piano organ duet version of the Overture to the Messiah by Handel. Miraculously, we captured the awe of that glorious music. When we finished, everyone in the sanctuary was completely silent. A holy moment indeed. Congratulations on 100 years.
One of my favorite memories, most powerful probably, was Maundy Thursday when we were doing foot washing. And after Art Wiens had washed the feet of someone else, he was waiting for someone to come up, and who came but Jordan Wiens. Here we had a 6-year-old washing the feet of a 76-year-old, maybe it was, and it was so powerful to see the way, it was an example to us of how age made no difference in terms of the relationships that developed in Herschel. And it also spoke to us of the focus on spiritual disciplines as well as service to each other. So thank you for inviting us to be part of your celebration. God is with you.
Hi, my name is Ruby Tretiak. I am the youngest child of Jake and Margaret Wiens. Bob and I were married in this church in June of 1974. That is a very happy memory for me. Art was the officiant. The string quartet consisted of my siblings, Leona, Theo, cousin Albert, and Theo's friend, Elf Doll.
Here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors and here's all the people.
Through all the years of living in the Herschel community, I've always admired and appreciated being part of what feels like an extended family. I'll never forget the Sunday about 2 months after we had moved to Herschel, as 6-year-old me had been pestering my parents the entire day about having friends over or whose place we were going to for supper. Even though we had only been here for 2 months, I had quickly figured out that this was a fairly regular tradition in the Herschel church. Despite my pleas, the answer the entire day had been a definite no. I'd finally resigned to the fact that this would have to be one of the rare Sundays where neither of these would occur when there was a knock on my bedroom door. I opened my door to see Nick, Curtis, and Matthew Weens on the other side. Further inspection would reveal the entire Herschel church had in fact made a surprise visit, and as I later discovered, was a staunchly carried out tradition that I too would become a part of in the years to follow. It was a wonderful, arms open welcome to a community that I continue to enjoy and be a part of, and one of the reasons that led me to moving back all these years later.
I can remember one time when I was home for the weekend. I think I maybe was a university student or something like that. It was home for the weekend. We headed to church on Sunday morning, but the power was out at home. We wondered if the power would be out at church too. When we got there, we found it was. Luckily, someone had brought a generator. I think it was Devin. Could be mistaken about that. And we ran an extension cord into the basement to plug in exactly one thing, which was the coffee maker. And shows you how important coffee time is to folks at Herschel. And we started the service after that with no microphone, no sound system or everything, but we had coffee.
Diane and I moved to the family farm, John and Eva Fair's farm at Herschel, in 1995, warmly welcomed by the Herschel Ebenfeld Mennonite Church. When my father died accidentally the next summer, this church showed us what community really is. Much of the congregation drove the 2 hours to be at the funeral in Osler. After the funeral, I tried to catch up on farm work after suppers, but eventually gave up. Neighbors kept coming to visit and pass on their condolences, and it was wonderful. We held our membership in this church with pride and have tried to replicate the sense of community that we ourselves experienced.
For me, and I'm sure for many others, being part of Ebenfeld Mennonite Church isn't only about the worship, the Sunday school, the coffee times, and the potlucks. Although these are all good things, it's also about the relationships and support we find here in this community of faith that are so important. A couple of memories that stand out for me are the camp-out weekends. Our family always enjoyed those times. I think there were a few late nights, even for the adults, playing shticks and eating goodies. Thanks, Levon. And another memory I have is of the housewarming the church threw for us soon after we moved to the farm. I still remember a sense of panic I had as I saw the cars turning into the driveway and wondered what was I going to feed all these people. And Lila assured me that it was covered, everybody brought food. It was a fun evening of food, visiting, and games.
I was the treasurer of the church for a number of years. 2 memories. The first was that the church ordered the piano and an organ at the same time. The cost would be $11,000. The week following that decision, there were $11,000 in the collection plate. Everything was paid for. The second is in the willingness of the congregation to help some of the families. The first was that we bought a van, a wheelchair van, and donated that to a family. The second, the same fall, we helped a family travel to Toronto for a medical surgery. It was certainly a giving church.
My husband Walter Andres and I were sponsored by the AK classes through MCC, and we arrived in Herschel summer 51 from Germany. The church was very welcoming, and it was wonderful that the services were in the German language. The first while Walter was hired to get the coal furnace fired up for Sunday. We would clean the church when we were asked. We always went to Herschel Church till I moved to Saskatoon on April 6, 2013.
The annual picnic at the fairgrounds. I remember playing around in the trees and exploring and having ice cream in the afternoon, and usually a touch football game and a wiener roast. And then I think Art Weens had a galvanized water tank he'd bring in full of cold, delicious water. I remember drinking straight out of the hose out of that tank.
One of my all-time favorite things is to go caroling on December 23rd. I think there's nothing better than going from farm to farm, celebrating Christmas, listening to the laughter of the young and the young at heart as we go and celebrate this almost 50-year tradition.
Herschel Mennonite Church was hosting an event for all 4 of the Ebenfeld churches. They cooked up some borscht to serve at that event. One pot of borscht that was left on the floor to cool and the lid not on it completely, they found a mouse floating in it the next morning. That was disposed of. The next pot, when it was being reheated, burnt, and so they could only use the top part of it. They drove into town and bought every tin of soup that they could find in the store shelves and mixed it with the leftover borscht and served it for that meal.
I remember a vivid memory. Marianne and I would sit from the second row bench from the front, and C.J. Workentine was our minister, and he did the sermon in German, and we could not understand anything. So we passed back and forth a full sheet of paper with a pen, notes, planning our week and how was your last week? And we'd rip it up at the end of the service so John and Pete wouldn't catch it.
I remember when I first attended the Herschel Church, I was kind of amazed that people were disrespectful when they talked about the men. They were always called either by their first name and initial or both initials, like it would be John P, H.P. I was quite amazed at that. Later I found out there were actually 27 Weems names in the phone directory. So therefore this was their way of sorting out who they were talking about. Even Reverend Orcantine was referred to as CJ.
People would get Christmas cards for Mr. and Mrs. Weens, and then they'd go around in church and people would try to figure out who they were really for. Sometimes people would actually just put down Mr. and Mrs. Peter Weens, and that eliminated everybody except for 5.
I can think of no better words than the words that the Apostle Paul wrote to his friends in Philippi. And these are words I want to leave with you. I thank my God every time I remember you.
One fond memory that I have of the church is Art Weens after every service would say the numbers 6 verses 24 to 26 benediction.
Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance